What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another review, and this time we're taking a look at Fantastic Four First Steps, the 37th film into the Marvel Cinematic Universe that is directed by Matt Shankman. The film stars an ensemble cast that includes Pedro Pascal, Vanessa Kirby, Eben Moss-Bach, and Joseph Quinn as the title characters. The overall story of this film is as follows. The film takes place in a 1960s retro-futuristic world in which the Fantastic Four must defend it from the incoming invasion of the cosmic entity known as Galactus, making this movie a more or less an adaptation of the Coming of Galactus comic book arc from the 1960s that was done by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. So with all that out of the way, let's talk about Fantastic Four First Steps and try and make this review as short as possible. So when it comes to the cinematic career of the Fantastic Four, let's just say that Marvel's first family has had a very, very bad track record. Without going into too much detail of the films that came before it, we'll just do a brief overview. So the very first Fantastic Four movie was done in 1994, but it was really done as a rights retainer with no intention of ever being released. That is the infamous movie, that is the infamous Roger Corman movie. Now, 10 years after that, we would get two official Fantastic Four releases, which are the two Tim Story movies that star Jessica Alba. And yeah, I mean, say what you want about Fantastic Four '05 and its sequel, Rise of the Silver Surfer. They are what they are. They're not memorable, but they're okay. They're disposable superhero filler movies. And this was during the time before, and these movies came out during the height of the Marvel boom period that predated the MCU. But not only that, the two Tim Story movies didn't really leave much of an impression of the general audience, as both films were not these big box office mega hits. And then, of course, we would get the 2015 infamous Fantastic, which was the death of the franchise which was the death of the Fantastic Four for a very, very long time. And for those who have seen Fantastic, you will know that that movie is not good and is the exact opposite of a faithful adaptation of the Fantastic Four. That movie does the exact opposite. But we're not talking about Fantastic. So, and of course, as we all know, the Disney acquisition of Fox. Fox was the company that owned the movie rights to the Fantastic Four. So for every good thing you could say that Fox did with the X-Men, you can equally say that they did equally bad things when it came to the Fantastic Four, as Fox just had no idea how to adapt Marvel's first family. And it got to the point of being frustrating because the Fantastic Four should not be a hard thing to adapt. It's silly cosmic space fun. One of the main things you got to get right with the Fantastic Four are the four principles. You got to get actors that can fully embody the personalities of Reed, Sue, Johnny, and Ben. Once you get that down, the rest of the movie should be easy. Which I think is a good segue to fully get talking about this movie, because one of the main positives I do have about First Steps is that it got the Fantastic Four right. Now, I am not the world's biggest Pedro Pascal fan. I have a lot of Pedro Pascal fatigue because he's in so many things and I just get tired of seeing him. But I will never deny the fact that the man is a very, very talented actor. And he is surprisingly good as Reed Richards. Like, I really liked Pedro Pascal's performance as Reed Richards. Now, I would have taken maybe 5 other actors over him, just me personally. But I understand it. Pedro Pascal at the moment is the flavor of the year. He's very, very popular. But that popularity is also winding down because he's been overexposed. But again, you can't deny the man's talent, and I thought that he played Reed Richards to the best of his abilities. He got that intelligence factor down. I thought that he had a very, very good on-screen chemistry with Vanessa Kirby, Sue Storm. I think they played really, really well off one another, and it wasn't done in a way where Sue was greater than Reed or Reed was greater than Sue. It was done in a way where they were both at an equal level, which is something that needs to be done for the Fantastic Four. Like, Reed and Sue are basically the co-leaders of the Fantastic Four. Like, if Reed is not around, Sue takes on the leadership because she has that equal authority, she's equally an authoritative figure when it comes to the team. So you need to have an actress that can hold her own as Sue Storm and have a leadership quality to her. And I thought Vanessa Kirby exuded that relatively well. But at the same time, while Reed and Sue need to have strong personalities, you also got to make sure that Ben and Johnny also stay true to their personalities. And I'm kind of iffy on that in this movie. Not saying that the acting was bad for The Thing and Johnny. I think Joseph Quinn as Johnny Storm was a perfect casting choice. I think he exuded the personality very, very well. I do like how they make references to Johnny being a womanizer, which is what he is. But they didn't but they didn't shove it in your face, because the only time that Johnny's really interacting with a female character is when he has his is when his little storyline with Solid Ball is going on that takes place throughout the movie. But you never see him womanizing other female characters. Yes, I do have an issue with that because that plays into Johnny's character, and that's something that I think the Tim Story movies did well in terms of Johnny Storm, where it showed him being a womanizer. It showed him being very, very flashy, wanting the attention. That's something that I don't think this film did particularly well with Johnny Storm's character. I think if you'd have got maybe a few more scenes of Johnny Storm being that cocky, arrogant person, yet somebody who means well, which the film does have in certain moments, but not fully, then I think the character of Johnny would have been better off for it. But in terms of what Joseph Quinn was able to give with his performance, I liked it. He was very charismatic. He had a lot of funny moments. He had some good quips. I like the scenes where he plays it straight and takes it serious. That's where you see the maturity of Johnny Storm. And again, I also like his dynamics with Reed and with Sue, with Johnny being Sue's little brother and Reed's brother-in-law. It works for me. I liked it. And then you have Evan Mossbach's performance as the Thing, Ben Grimm, who is Reed's best friend, the rock monster. I thought Evan Mossbach was really good in the role. He's no Michael Chiklis, who I think is the true representation of how the Thing should be acted and portrayed. But with that being said, I don't think Bach did a bad job. Honestly, truthfully, I think the Thing is kind of underutilized in this movie because you don't really see Ben doing a whole lot of Thing stuff. Not only that, it feels like Thing already had his character moments and he's already comfortable being this rock monster, which one of the more interesting aspects of Ben Grimm is the fact that he has to live with the fact that he's a rock monster, and that's the tragedy of his character. But at the same time, he has the Fantastic Four to fall back on that overall makes him feel whole and complete. To me, that's what makes Ben one of the more interesting characters of the Fantastic Four. But that's really not in this movie. In this movie, he's fully formed. He's fully embraced being the rock monster. He is Reed's best friend. He is Sue's best friend. He's a friend of Johnny. He's basically the uncle of the group, and he acts like it. Like the Thing acts like that lovable uncle who you want to hang out with. And that's about it. I don't really have a whole lot to say when it comes to Ben Grimm in this movie. I mean, he and Johnny do have some funny bantering back and forth, and I do like the chemistry overall with all four principal actors. But like I said, in this movie, some get more screen time than most, particularly Reed and Sue. They get the most development, while Johnny and Ben, they kind of fall by the wayside a little bit, and they don't really have that much to do, at least in my eyes. But as I said, overall, the four principal actors, they did what they needed to do, which is act like a family unit, and I buy the fact that these four are a family and very protective over one another. In terms of these side characters, I mean, the way they're handled are, better than most. I mean, you have Paul Walter Hauser, who plays Harvey Adler, the Mole Man. He has like a little thing going on where he has his underground kingdom of Subterranea, and then he eventually forms a truce with Sue Storm where he does not perform any more evil ways, and then he comes back in the third act of the movie to help the Fantastic Four when Galactus comes to Earth. And that's basically the role of the Mole Man. He doesn't really do anything, and he doesn't really mean anything to the plot. Like, you can take the Mole Man out of this movie, and it would still be the same. Like, yeah, I like Paul Walter Hauser. I think the scenes that he does a decent job at playing the Mole Man. He just could have used more screen time and more development. Now we get to the two big ones. So when it comes, let's get the elephant out of the room and talk about Julia Gardner's performance as Solid Ball, the female Super Surfer. There was a lot of controversy with this movie when it chose to do Solid Ball instead of Norman Rad in terms of the Super Surfer. Me, personally, I will always prefer Norman Rad's Super Surfer, mainly because that was my first exposure to the character. through the Fantastic Four cartoon from back in the day, and the fact that I had the Norman Reed action figure as a kid. Solid Ball, I mean, let's not pretend that Solid Ball was a major character in the comic books, because she wasn't. It's really well known that she has maybe one story arc that she's a part of, and she is killed off within 3 or 4 pages of being in that story. So Solid Ball is an inconsequential character to the greater Marvel universe. She's normally portrayed as the wife of Norman Reed, who is his primary motivation to joining Galactus, so that way she could be spared. And to an extent, that's really what Solid Ball's character is in this movie. She joins Galactus as his herald, so that way her planet can be spared. You basically just gave her Norman Reed's origin, and that's about it. Now, do I think Julia Gardner turns in a bad performance? No, not really. She was fine for what she was given. If anything, Silver Surfer is one of the most underutilized aspects of this movie, and this is something that I'll give Rise of Silver Surfer. They actually made the Silver Surfer, Norman Reed, in that movie look like a threat, look like he means business. And the Rise of Silver Surfer has some really, really cool action sequences with Johnny and the Surfer. I think this movie tried to go down that route, but it didn't really fully. What's the word I'm looking for? Capture it the way I think that they wanted to, and that's a shame. Instead, they kind of went down this almost romantic arc where Johnny kind of has a thing for Solid Ball, but it never fully goes down that route. I mean, I think if it would have went down the route of Johnny having a little thing for Solid Ball, it would have given Johnny something to do, instead of just acting more like a background character and only having moments here and there. That's just me personally. You got to give Johnny something. But I do like how, everyone makes fun of him when he talks nicely about the Silver Surfer, calling her cute and kind and stuff like that. I do like how Johnny's main contribution is how he's able to decipher Solid Ball's alien language, and also learned about the history about all the planets she helped Galactus consume. That's actually a pretty good scene where Johnny Storm gets into the Surfer's head and causes her to have almost like a meltdown sort of way by forcing her to relive what she's done for Galactus. That's actually a good scene. I liked it. Yeah, I'm not saying the Silver Surfer didn't have any bad moments. There's pocket moments here and there. I mean, there is one moment where she's chasing the Fantastic Four through a light speed thing, and it's very reminiscent of A New Hope, where Han and Chewie are trying to fight off some Imperial fighters while escaping the Death Star. The scene is literally lifted from A New Hope. It's relatively well done. It's an entertaining action sequence. I'm not going to say anything bad about it, but that's really the extent of Silver Surfer after that, because once that's over, like I said, you had the moment with her and Johnny, and then she kind of disappears from the third act. I don't remember her. She doesn't really do much to help the Fantastic Four fend off Galactus. Speaking of which, this movie finally gave us a true adaptation of Galactus. He's not a stupid giant cloud like they did in the Rise of Silver Surfer, which was stupid. He is Galactus in all his giant purple disproportionate glory, and it looks awesome. The fact that they did a blend of a practical costume with some CGI enhancements, perfect. This is some of the best looking CGI in the movie itself. And the movie does not have bad CGI. It mostly has decent CGI, but I think it looks the best with Galactus. And Ralph Ineson, who plays the character, you know what? He doesn't have a whole lot of screen time, but Ralph Ineson does what he needs to do with Galactus. He makes Galactus not a villain, but a force of nature who feels this irresistible need for hunger. Not because he wants to, but because it's in his nature to feed on these planets to consume. But I also like how Ineson gives the character a lot of pathos, because Galactus views being a planet eater as a curse, something that he cannot control, and something that he's bound to do. And this is what leads to the overall this is what leads to the overall plot of this movie, in which Galactus wants the son of Reed and Sue, Franklin Richards, to take his place. And the entire movie is really Reed and Sue and the rest of the group trying to formulate plans to not give up their son, to not give up Franklin for Galactus. And that's basically the whole purpose of Galactus, is that he wants to feed on Earth. However, he's willing to spare Earth if they will allow Franklin to take his place as the new planet eater. So that way Galactus can finally be rid of a curse. But in so doing, he's cursing someone else to his fate. So I like how they handle Galactus for the most part. Like, they don't make him overly villainous, but at the same time, they don't make him a good guy. He's what he is. Like I said, he's a force of nature. And Ralph Ineson, with that just deep, hypnotic voice that feels otherworldly, just enhances the character of Galactus to the point of pure intimidation. And after the Fantastic Four has their meeting with Galactus, where Galactus pretty much says that if you give me your son, I will not eat your world. This is what causes a dilemma within the group themselves. This is also what causes the 1960s New York to turn against them. For the longest time, the Fantastic Four have basically been the Avengers of this alternate universe, and now the inhabitants of this universe are turning against them because, hey, listen, give up the kid so that we can be saved. I don't think the movie played up this drama more than enough. I think it kind of resolved it a little too quickly, because I think you could have got a lot of moral dilemma out of this. Like the Fantastic Four are being put in a position where if they give up Franklin, the Earth will be saved. And you have divisions of people on Earth who are for that and against that. I think if the movie would have played that up just a little bit more, you could have gotten a lot of good dramatic beats out of it, where they examine both sides and try to make cases for both sides. I don't think the movie did that enough. It kind of plays it from the side of, no, giving Franklin is bad, but they don't try to make it interesting by bringing up a debate aspect to it, which I thought would have been pretty cool, but didn't happen. But ultimately, this leads to Reed to develop a plan in order to push Galactic into the outer regions of the universe by building this bridge portal. And the whole purpose of this portal is to transport Earth from Galactus's clutches. And this is pretty much what leads to the whole climax of the third movie of the film, where Galactus comes to Earth and he acts more like a kaiju. And I don't know, I'm kind of iffy on Galactus lumbering around like he's Godzilla. Like, I don't know, you expect more out of Galactus when he invades Earth, but I will not lie. The Fantastic Four teaming up to take on Galactus, it was entertaining. And the carnage candy that we see, it is pretty good. It's good superhero fare. I mean, it ain't the best climax you'll ever see, but it was entertaining for the most part. And when you have the added drama of the Fantastic Four trying everything they can to protect Franklin from being kidnapped by Galactus, the stakes I thought were pretty decently high. But at the same time also personal, because the Fantastic Four are trying to keep their family intact. But ultimately, Galactus is defeated when Sue Storm uses her powers to push Galactus through a portal, causing him to go to the outer regions of the universe. And the movie tries to do a Sue Storm fake-out death, which I did not care for. We all know Sue Storm is not going to die, so why did they play it up like she was dead? This is the same thing that Rise of Silver Surfer did, where they did a Sue Storm fake-out. It would have just made more sense if Sue Storm just got the wind knocked out of her and was in a brief coma for a couple of minutes. Playing it off like she died, I thought was just forced drama and was not necessary whatsoever. Yeah, but ultimately the film ends with the Fantastic Four back in the good graces of their universe, and we get the mid-credit scene of that takes place 4 years into the future, where Sue sees a now 4-year-old Franklin being in the presence of Victor Von Doom. And it's been confirmed in this mid-credits that the man under the cloak, whose face is not shown, is indeed Robert Downey Jr., who filmed this scene while doing Doomsday. You could have at least showed his metallic face in all its glory, or have him say a little piece of dialogue. That's all you had to do. But yes, this further teases and builds up the Avengers Doomsday, which is very, very imminent. Okay, so before we wrap this up, let me just talk about some little things here and there. I think Matt Shankman's overall direction of this movie was really, really well done. Matt Shankman was the man who brought us Wonder Vision, and my main complaints of that show is not really Matt Shankman's direction, it's really the overall writing of that show. But in this movie, I think he made up for it because he puts in a very earnest attempt to do a good movie, and you can see it. The cinematography of the movie, it's that standard Marvel MCU cinematography. It's not bold or dynamic, but it gets the job done. But I will say this: the movie does try to do some cool visuals, so I'll give it that. The special effects. This is one of the better Marvel movies of the more modern age to have decent special effects. I think they pulled that off fairly well. Another thing that I like the opening movie's montage where the Fantastic Four's origin and a lot of their exploits are told in the vein of this talk show host telling his audience this is how the Fantastic Four came to be, and here's some of the highlights that they have done since they came together. I like that. You're able to do the Fantastic Four's origin story without having to dedicate a large chunk of the movie to it. And not only that, this montage scene pays a lot of homages to Fantastic Four lore. Like, they actually, remember that first Fantastic Four comic book where you have that monster coming up from under the ground fighting the group? That's in the movie. That's pretty cool. That's a nice little homage, and that's a nice little homage to the first cover of the Fantastic Four. And they also make references and stuff to other Fantastic Four villains like I think Red Mist and the Puppet Master. So, you got some cool little Easter eggs in there from the Fantastic Four lore that are in this opening montage, which I think is one of the funner aspects of this film, which was good. I liked it. So, yeah, I think I pretty much covered everything that there is to cover with this movie. Like, overall, I liked Fantastic Four First Steps. I think this was an earnest attempt at doing a legitimately good Fantastic Four movie. And not only that, this movie kind of reminded me of the initial MCU films of Phase 1 and 2, where they're actually trying to do something good. And to me, Fantastic Four is trying to be a good movie, and it's trying not to make a political statement, it's just trying to be fun. And that's what I can say about Fantastic Four, is that it's a fun movie. It's an earnest attempt at fun. And it's trying to recapture the spirit of the phases 1 and 2 of the MCU. And for that, my overall grade is a 7 out of 10. I don't think this movie's perfect. It does have a lot of flaws to it, but but it is very entertaining. The core group, it works for me. Their dynamics work. Yes, I would have done things a little bit differently to tighten it up a little bit, but for what we got, this is an earnest attempt at a Fantastic Four movie, and I'm very optimistic as to how they're going to integrate this version of the FF into the MCU as a whole once Doomsday comes along. So yeah, I'm very optimistic. But yeah, those are my thoughts on Fantastic Four First Steps. Let me know your thoughts on the comment sections down below. Like the video and subscribe, and I will check you back next time for more.